Awesome. Okay. All right. Welcome to all the attendees for today. My name is Joanne. Hi. This is the Intro to Research workshop for Night Hacks that I'm giving. I don't know if you went to the SACE research workshop that was last week, but this will be similar. But the difference is that we will have an Ask Me Anything research panel with a lot of talented student researchers. So make sure to take advantage of that. Ask all your questions. Okay. All right, a little bit about me before we move on. So I'm a third-year computer science major. I am graduating this semester, though. So my research focuses on machine learning and virtual reality, and pretty much finding the privacy and security implications. Because if you do machine learning on like motion data that's captured from the headset and controllers, you can often find out information about a person, and that's not always ideal. And so that's kind of the work that I'm focusing on, and hopefully all goes well. In the fall, I'll be starting a grad program. So yeah, research has really changed my life because I really would not be on my way to doing grad school right now if I did not get involved. Okay, so let's do a quick icebreaker. And I know there are not a ton of you, so you're really going to get to know each other today. So what I would like you to do is, if you are already doing research, I would like you to turn to someone close by and just tell them what you are doing. If you do not have a research position, maybe share what you want to do and what you want to get out of this workshop. So I'm going to give you like 2 or 3 minutes, so go on and yap, talk to each other, and then we'll get back to it.
Three different projects. The one that's more about is essentially which did that stuff. And it is compared to the traditional DCI it is more meant for that's really interesting. I'm very intrigued. Yes, that's very much what first is just we worked on that's the smaller it is error correction. That is more of a graphic maybe I told it. But still pretty cool. I believe my lab has sort of trying to like piece together data. I think it's piece together data. I think like you have like 20 students different like you just go on page. Yeah, like I know. Look at the last one. Just a brief summary. You give more details now. Brief summary. Yeah, but those are more like easy. Generally, I think they are. We've been coding for all. Have you looked up like graphics like? I don't think I have time. Specifically, what I do in my yeah, we do making data pipeline. They usually know most CSS how to make trend analysis, so they know that they might not see electro. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's like brainwaves pretty much, and it extract electricity in the headset. And what I'm doing is I just want to make sure well, research, some computer vision on cell tracking, right? I can still Professor or if you're like master. How was that? Dylan. Mine is more like you're doing research, right? I got grades. They gave me more than me. A lot of the solutions
Well, these are panelists, but yeah, I'm running it myself this time. You know,
I'm only here for like 10
okay, well, thank you so much for stopping by, though. It means a lot. Yeah, I told Rohan, like, oh, I'm giving it today. He was like, what? It's today. Why didn't you tell me? And then I realized, oh, I probably should have said something. It's fine.
Yeah, I just hopped on campus. I'm about to head to a research study.
Oh, okay. Okay, enjoy. Yeah, we're gonna miss you at the movie tonight. So yeah, thank you. A lot of Minecraft movie.
Like how many?
Oh, how many? Oh, it was 14, but I think we're dropping down to 12.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot of people.
we're trying to like buy out this like this specific section in the movie theater, but I think some people are holding off on buying the tickets because they don't want to pay the online convenience fee.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so they're waiting. I already bought my tickets.
Just buy every other one. So no one's.
No, that's the way to go. That is the way to go. But I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for showing up.
What's the icebreaker here?
So right now I just had them like talk among themselves, like if you're doing research, what are you doing, and or what do you want to do? I'm kind of learning from last time. I'm trying to get the room more engaged, and also it's a lot smaller crowd, so I'm trying to just like I'm learning from past experiences. But yeah, the slide deck is like pretty much the same thing. I just like
You just made
condensed
it
it.
night hacks.
Yeah, I condensed it. So yeah, I'm not too stressed. I'm just gonna give this workshop a little bit. Yeah, I'm trying to gauge when they're done. So we're still chatting.
My research is really non-CS.
Ah, yeah. Well, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's true. Night hacks is definitely more CS page. So.
I had to draft up like the IRB consent form for.
Oh. I'm trying to like listen in to like figure out when to move on.
How long has it been?
It's been like 3 minutes.
Probably cut it off in 5 just so it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably before now, so just in a little bit I'll cut it off.
So wait, how did they reach out to you about that?
I mean, this was pretty early on. Like they were like, oh, how about April 1st? And I was like, I'm already doing a SACE one for on the 1st. So this was like early, and I was like, I'm sure I could reuse something.
That's so funny. If they wanted one on the first,
Yeah.
it could've made
So
it
they
cool.
asked me, and then I was like, I'm doing one for SACE. It was gonna be like a Tau Beta Pi collab, but then they like dropped out last second, so now it's just me. Just night hacks. Yeah. All right. I think I'm gonna cut it off, but feel free to take a seat and just leave whenever you need. All right. Thank you for coming, Jay.
I kind of just go off my research install experience mostly because just computers, like if something came over. I think I'm doing. I think I'm probably doing something. Yeah, there's a bread. We just gotta look for it. It's like if the doctor's too small. Yeah, if you do some research on how they can like prevent doctor's disabilities like Alzheimer's. Because like one of the main issues is dying. So how would they actually?
So what?
It's nothing compared to the amount of time. I'm like, yo. Yeah, it depends on exactly. We're also bringing like R&D. I'm about to get on this board's lab to go back to work. I'm gonna like some like electronic, like brain, like and if there is a specific one, you don't have to run random groups, right? I don't have it in a specific one. You got it. And so
Let's just say the horse can like.
that's. It depends, mostly because my lab doesn't really focus on more of the net.
Yeah, I didn't know the panel started.
You rather net more.
I was gonna say.
Yes.
I can tell you all about that. So, the hackathon itself is pretty good up until judging.
All the solutions right now are very slow, they're very powerful.
Project, so we made
And
here, right? And
yeah,
it's
it's not something
actually the positions of your
you
wrist.
can't build a framework.
And
Yo, Leo, should I boot it?
what's up?
Like I had mentioned.
Oh, he's gonna show you live. So track the position of your wrists, and you can put it within certain boxes and it'll play notes. So you can move between instruments and then you can move notes
What you
too.
need to do.
That's true. I don't know if the demo right.
Oh yeah, Jerry, I didn't like because I saw you
on
on the replay and didn't get a chance to brag about the
Oh,
club. I bragged about practice a lot, man.
I'll have to see, yeah.
I was telling the prepares about it, but I was like,
If I don't do it, it's easier at draw stuff. Probably not. But if I stand up,
We had fun in
the
the room. There was like, we were in here with the top tour project, the top tour. Those guys were so funny.
Yeah. They were like, oh, we didn't name it like that on purpose. It was on purpose. It was on purpose.
He told me he told me verbatim 5 minutes before they were submitting that the guy, the project was called Talk To, it's supposed to be called Talk To, but the guy was just brain rotted and he was like, I'm gonna call it Talk To, and he submitted it.
One side of the chart. So you
When the project first, it gets
reading out.
he's got it up.
So because you're doing it.
Are you excited to hear it again?
Oh yeah, I'm so excited.
And time to read this. The issue with unary reading is that it's really
Yeah, that was our project.
it's really like I want to say slow, but
Stop now.
Oh, that's your
I'm being disruptive.
you're trading accuracy.
So it works by getting your webcam frame, sends it to a backend through a WebSocket, and
Yeah.
then applies.
Yo, it's on multiplayer right now, Leo. Everyone's getting.
Wait, is this still deployed?
No, not
we're
yet.
working on it.
So what CDM are you using? So we're using YOLO on the back end if you're running multiplayer, and otherwise, if you're running solo, it uses media pipe.
It's getting muted.
Oh yeah. Oh wait. Try multiple.
So it depends. My professor.
You're 30 minutes.
That's sick.
Yo, Dylan, try making like one of those cool beats you did during the demo.
I need to get people out of the frame.
Just put it on single.
Like, I think I was the only CS student up until like a while
Play
ago.
like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
And,
Oh, zoom the fingers.
No, it's good.
Caesar said that none.
I depends roughly.
You gotta put your.
Last semester I was teaching 5 hours a week.
Let's get the beat going.
This semester I'm playing closer to say like 6, 7, 8. And
6, 7.
Yeah. 6, 7, 8, around there, it depends. This week, like for example, what I was doing is that I was connecting my data pipelines to a parcel that I had made.
Just like old times, 3 days ago.
And like I had mentioned,
That's sick.
so
Dude, people were so sick and tired of us at the end of the weekend. So we had that on speaker, and for our demo we got like a little GPL, and we played it out loud in the demo room like so mad.
That's crazy.
That's so fun. If there was a most creative project over, it's like.
Yeah, like the goofy project.
but if you
The fun
see progress on what you're doing and like your checkouts and everything have been good.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap up.
Yeah, no, we're gonna do an AMA too, so
Alright, I'm gonna wrap this up.
wrap it up, bring it
Alright,
back.
I'm glad you guys got a chance to chat with each other, get to know each other. Don't worry, you will have plenty of time to chat again and ask questions to our panel, but we're gonna move on for now. So that is the end of our icebreaker. I believe the ice has been broken. So a quick table of contents here, just so you get an overview of what we're going to cover. We're gonna discuss what is research and why do you want to do it in the first place. And then we'll talk about how do you even find your research interest and how do you get into it. One example is the cold email, which I will show you an example of. And after you secure your position, now we're going to talk about how can you be a good researcher and make the most of it. Finally, I'll just throw in a smattering of advice for publications and whatnot, because you never know when you're going to need that information. And then I do have links to resources, so take advantage of that when I post the slides. Okay. So, quickly, what is research? It is a structured process of investigating questions to generate new knowledge or deepen understanding of existing ideas. So basically, it's digging real deep into one question that you're interested in. And this often looks like working with a faculty at the university level. I know certain people are really interested in certain questions, so they'll do digging themselves, and that certainly qualifies as research. But if you want to get a publication out of it or have it be more formal, then working with a professor is definitely the way to go. So yeah, it might look like running experiments, you might be interacting with people and actually conducting the study. Like for example, I had to run some virtual reality studies and guide people through the process of putting on the headset and holding the controllers correctly, etc. Or it could look like data analysis, and that's kind of what I've done as well on the machine learning side. So your experience is really going to vary depending on what department and field you're working in, as well as what professor you're going to be interacting with. So that's research in a nutshell. So what are the benefits of doing research in the first place? Well, for one, it really boosts your graduate and med school applications. I don't know if, I think because Night Hacks, we're all CS here. But if you're considering doing a master's or especially a PhD where they really want you to have research experience, doing it in your undergrad is the way to go. It also improves your resume for jobs, internships, and scholarships. Like, for example, on my resume, I have a section at the bottom that says publications, and I've been told that even when I'm applying for software engineering internships, that's still pretty impressive because it demonstrates that I can really learn on my own and learn quickly. And these are all skills that you want the recruiter to know that you possess. By doing research, you also get to connect with other researchers, your peers, and grad students, which are actually an invaluable resource because when you talk to someone who's older and wiser and they were in your shoes just a few years ago, you can learn a lot from them and avoid some of the mistakes that they made along the way. This opens doors to academia, like I said, grad school, or industry research. So, for example, companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, they often have research and development departments. And that's often a combination of research and software engineering. So if you're interested in both, that could be a really great job prospect. And by boosting your research experience in your undergrad, you're setting yourself up for success later on. And yeah, it's also always exciting to contribute to scientific advancements because that is all that research is. You're putting something new into the world. All right, so if you are here and you're like, I want to do research, but I have no idea what I would even do it in, this slide is for you. This is how you can find your research interests. So mainly, you want to explore what kind of topics and classes excite you and spur your interest. So let's say, for example, let's say you took the elective cryptography and you thought that, wow, this is so interesting because there are a lot of different algorithms and there are different techniques, and with the rise of quantum computing, how might cryptography change? If you find that really interesting, then cryptography might be the research field for you, and you can talk to your professor that's teaching it and see what research opportunities are out there. So yeah, really asking yourself, what kind of problems do I want to help solve, and how does that relate to what I want to be? Like if you want to do cybersecurity, then for the cryptography example I gave, that would be a perfect fit. And yeah, just talk to professors because honestly, I can tell you right now, I've had conversations with my research professor and he's told me that most professors, their true passion is research. So if you talk to them in their office hours, you go up and be like, hey, I would like to know about the papers that you published and I'm curious about the things you've been working on. Chances are they'll be more passionate about that, talking about that, rather than actually talking about the homework assignment that's due that night or whatever. So yeah, spark those conversations with your professors or even your peers who you know are doing research, which is why we have this panel today. Okay, so this is the very broad three-step process of how to get into research. So firstly, you want to look up UCF departments and colleges that match your interests. If you're interested in researching at another university, that would apply there as well. We just said UCF because you're here, so you might as well. The second step is find professors in that field and actually read at least one of their papers. Later on, when you're reaching out to professors and sending cold emails, you don't want to appear like you just found their name and are just sending a request into the dark. You want to prove that you've actually done your research, pun intended, and you've actually read what they've worked on, that you care, and that you're genuinely interested in contributing. So reading at least one of their publications, just skimming through it, that is how you're going to set yourself up for success. And then step 3, you're going to prepare the email. This is the cold email approach. And I believe some of us in the research panel, which is going to be coming up soon, I believe some of them got into their positions without cold emailing, but I'll let them discuss what that was like. Okay, yeah, so if you want to go the cold email approach, then the general template is you want to start out with a greeting and introduction. You want to say your year and your major at UCF. And finally, why are you interested in their lab and their research in the first place? And this is where you can incorporate little details from their paper to prove that you've read it and that you are legitimately interested. And finally, you want to ask to set up a meeting if they're interested. And this is going to be key because this is essentially the interview that you will have with the research professor. And honestly, these are often pretty chill. The professor just going to ask you some questions like, oh, what are you interested in and what do you do in your spare time? If it's related to this topic. It's often more like a coffee chat and they're just getting to know you rather than a hardcore interview. So I have a very quick mini task. It should take like 2 minutes. I want each of you to look up one professor at UCF on your phone and find a paper that they published. And then when you do, jot that down in your notes app just for future reference and share with the person that maybe you were talking with before about what you found. See if you can find anything new. So I'm going to set like a 2-minute timer and we're going to speed run this. See how quickly you can find information.
Well, I didn't even need the security research,
All right, 2 minutes, starting now.
Did you look at me?
Yeah. I thought of a professor.
Were you looking at
Me. He has so many papers.
He did do research.
No, but I didn't know it was red team.
Dude, he was cracked. I'm not gonna lie.
He's a great professor, bro. He was a good professor until. Yeah. Bro. Cut it out. What could you
Yeah, let me know what you guys find.
I sent these emails earlier.
My name is
Oh,
Jane
wow,
Doe.
you actually already sent emails?
My name is Jane Doe.
Well, here's the question. So,
My name is Jane Doe.
Hello.
Okay.
Richard Phillips.
I didn't like, it just seems like I just randomly found.
So this is actually, like, this is good, mostly because you're sending them an email. My recommendation though, would be instead of like interest in whatever's
Whoa, there, I'm not Carlos.
Instead of being, oh, I would like to start on my book, just be, okay, if you have time, you show it, I noticed these professors, like, they're passionate, like then they look at research that they're working on.
You gonna lower the webcam?
They yap about them so much, and you can find a way to actually get it. Like by yourself,
Like with our app, we
I know
use
this.
and then I was also attached to
it works a lot better.
mostly because you might actually be lucky, like I have I sent my resume, and it's like, yo, let me get you in an interview immediately. But
Yeah,
I would try to go more for that route.
We did it using one app.
But in the form of email, it's good that you're already finding a professor. What type of professors are
Other side of the
there?
bay.
Never heard of the name.
So this is Mark, yeah, this is, yeah, Mark Heinrich and Jan Solden. And then, then for computer vision, Chen,
Does it put over like a little high crime rate? But like, but not ours.
Oh, yeah, these are getting all,
Yeah, you're getting.
yeah, Yogesh and then, Malark.
Okay.
Yo.
Yeah, no, it's always good to like. In my opinion, for this stuff, they love to yap about it. They love to yap about it. Just try to go more through that route at least personally.
Who's the guy that you're doing research with?
Iwu. Yeah, you can if you want. You can email him. He did. Like I got a movie before him. Iwu. I thought you were gonna finish my.
No. I was coming over to punch you actually.
Paper about the nonlinear control of real mobile robots.
Really?
Yeah. It's by the nanotechnology department.
He's a crazy lad.
Alrighty, I hope you guys found something interesting in that brief mini task. If you started conversations, you can definitely pick them up right after. But yeah, so now you hopefully have an idea of what professors are out there, what their research fields are, as well as some examples of publications they've made. So yeah, let's move on from here. Here's an example of my first cold email if you were curious about what they look like in general. If you can read this if you want, but like TLDR, I sent this email completely on a whim. If you look at the timestamp, this is from the summer before I even started college. So I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, hey, I got an email and they wanted to recruit me for your VR study, but I can't do it. However, I'm still interested. So can we just like talk about that? If you want to do a cold email, I recommend being a little bit more structured, a bit more organized than I was, but I set a shot in the dark, and this is actually what the response was. So this is currently my research professor. She was like, yeah, I would actually be happy to meet with you and have a brief Zoom chat and just understand what your interests are, and this was the beginning of my research journey. So I look back at these emails and I'm very fond of it, although it's kind of cringy. If I didn't send this email completely on a whim, let me tell you, I would not be like heading to grad school right now. So definitely give it a shot, even if you think your email is not perfect. It's more important that you send it than it be like perfect, you know.
All right, yeah, so just be genuine and give it a shot. Like I said, you never know when this might lead to publications down the road, which, if you're applying to a master's or PhD, can be immensely helpful in your applications. All right, so assuming that you've secured that position, you've sent your cold emails, you've chatted with the professor, or you networked with maybe someone in this room who can get you a research position. Assuming that you have the research position now, what do you do? So here's some general advice on how to be a good researcher. First of all, you need to think about research as different from your coursework. From my experience, your coursework, as long as you show up to class, or I guess sometimes people don't even need to show up to class, as long as you get your assignments turned in and you're doing pretty well, you're doing your exams, you get good grades, you'll be fine. However, for doing research, you need to consistently prove your character as a person, because you are not being examined as just numbers on a page. Your research professor is looking at you as a student and as a person. And this is the time to really show the best side of yourself. So be proactive and be dependable. So this might look like reaching out instead of waiting for your professor to reach out first and being like, hey, I have some time this week. I would be glad to put some work into whatever project we're working on. Could you let me know how I can be helpful? Just doing that, sending that simple email, being proactive can really help you stand out. And be dependable. Do what you say you will do. If you say, oh, I will get this done by the end of the week, do your absolute best to get it done by the end of the week. But we are all human. We all make mistakes. There are certainly many deadlines that I didn't meet personally. But if you say something, do your absolute best to hold up your end of the bargain. Go above and beyond. Like I said, it's not coursework. It's not just meet the absolute minimum and you'll be fine. Research is what you make of it. You get out of it what you put in. So if you put in a lot of time and effort and your professor sees that you care, then you will be gaining more out of it, and your professor might even trust you with publication opportunities. You never know until you put that work in what is going to happen. At the same time, be yourself. Don't be too stiff or stressed out about oh, I need to make myself stand out and I need to be the best of the best. Just be a person. And because at the end of the day, your research professor, your PhD peers, just the grad students, and even your undergrad peers, they're all just humans. And at the end of the day, we all just want to go home and do something relaxing. So the more you can form these human connections that are just more personal rather than solely professional, the better, because you never know what amazing things might open up there. For example, I became pretty close to one of the PhD students in my lab, and she actually invited me to her wedding. You never know when something like that's going to happen, and now she's a really dear friend of mine, and she started out as just a research colleague, and now she's an assistant professor at Drexel University. And when I was working on applying to different grad schools, she was like, hey, I would actually love to have you as my student, so why don't you apply to the university I'm working at? I'm not going to end up going there, but the opportunity that she gave me, it wouldn't have come unless we were good friends. So, yeah. Also, be adaptable and open to learning new skills fast. Research is a very fast-moving field, so you never know when you might need to pick up a new technology, learn Unity, even though it sucks. You just gotta suck it up, and if your research professor is like, hey, I need you to use this technology, just be flexible and show that you're willing to learn. Here it says 90% of your PI's impressions, so PI's principal investigator, aka the research professor you're working with, 90% of their impression of you comes from clear communication. So send email updates regularly just to prove that you still care about the position, that you're staying on top of everything, and be honest about where you are. Do not lie about where you are. Do not say that you have it nearly completed when you just started yesterday, because they will know. They will find out. And most of the times, it is so much better to be honest and be like, hey, I am legitimately struggling. I need some help. The research professor, they understand. They were in your shoes once, too. Either they will help you or they will refer you to some of the grad students who can help you, and then you can learn more from that experience. So there is no shame in asking for help. it is definitely the right move. And yeah, consult with the grad students because again, they're very wise. They often have like 3, 4, 5, maybe even more years of experience than you. Just chat with them and see what mistakes that you can avoid because chances are they walked the same path as you way back when. So that's some general advice. Yeah, and then how to make the most of your research. So the advice I just gave you kind of operates under the assumption that your PI is a good one. So make sure that your PI is a good one. You need a research professor who respects you, who trusts you, and who gives you opportunities. If they are treating you like garbage or using you just for grunt work, you have to like weigh that a little bit because part of doing undergrad research is, I'm going to be completely honest with you, some of it is grunt work. But if this is consistent and you see no room for growth and you're being treated badly, really reconsider, do I really want to work in this lab? Do I want to work with this professor? Because at the end of the day, it's your career and you have the right to walk away when it's right. Just give it a chance, stick it out. If it still doesn't work out, then drop it. Understand the lab's expectations and goals. This goes back to clear communication. Also, forming the connections. It's not just good for the human aspect, of course, but it certainly helps with strong letters of recommendation. When I applied to my grad programs, I had to get 3 really strong letters of recommendation. And one of them was from my research professor, one of them was from the PhD student who invited me to her wedding, because she's a professor now too. And another one is a professor who has worked closely with my PI. So all 3 of them had gotten to know me over the years, and they could speak to my character and abilities as a researcher. And honestly, if they didn't give me as strong letters of recommendation, I don't think I would have gotten into a PhD program. So it can be really crucial if you're thinking of doing grad school. And even if you aren't thinking of doing grad school, if there's another research position that you're interested in, or even a job that requires research experience, this can help with that too. So no matter where you're heading in life, if you have even the slightest inkling that research will help you, then go for it. Okay, I think I'm going to just touch on this very briefly because this is further down the road. But if you wanted just an idea of, hey, I really want to do a poster, or I really want to publish a paper down the road, what is that even like if you have no clue? Just quick, very, very broad overview of what that's like. For a poster, it's definitely less formal. You just have a poster like this big, and then you just type up your methodology, your conclusions, and throw in some visuals, and you can often present that at a showcase either at UCF or there are conferences that you can apply to and increase your visibility by putting your work out there. So posters are more chill and just a general demonstration of what you've been working on. Papers, on the other hand, are definitely more intensive. These involve identifying a conference that you really want to submit to, really putting in a lot of work to not only run the experiments correctly and generate solid research, but also writing. You've got to present your work and let people know that it is worth reading, worth considering, and worth building off of. So this often involves multiple rounds of drafting, conferring with your co-authors and your professor, and then getting some feedback from the peer review process. And then if they're like, yeah, you can move on to the next stage, you got to revise it, and then send it again. Yeah, you can move on to the next stage, revise it, send it again. This is, for context, this is the paper that I have published at IEEE ISMAR, the International Symposium on Mixed and Augmented Reality. And this whole process of rewriting and submitting it again, it took multiple months, so it took a lot of patience, a lot of waiting, but that's pretty much it. And if you get accepted as the paper, congratulations, take some time off to celebrate, but also plan to attend a conference and plan to give your presentation and just share what you've found with the world. So yeah, this is kind of the general research publication process. And I then post it on LinkedIn because, we got to promote ourselves. So yeah, and this is a link to my paper if you're curious, later when we post these slides. Yeah, and then this is me at the conference actually presenting the paper that was on the last slide. So pretty much, if you get to this point, congratulations.
practice, practice, practice on your presentation, and yeah, just be confident and share what you have to say with the world. And chances are a lot of people who are at the conference will respect you for it. Going to conferences is really amazing because you get the chance to network with people you never would have met otherwise. I'm talking about professors at other universities. I'm talking about famous people in the field. Thankfully, because of my research professor introducing me, I got to meet some really, really cool people, including some of the founders of 3D user interfaces and virtual reality itself. It was kind of insane. And you don't really get the chance to meet them unless you go to a conference. So if that's something you want to aim for, I definitely recommend it. Go for it. All right, so this is on kind of like the other side of the spectrum, because on one side it's like, yeah, research is great, but truthfully everybody deals with imposter syndrome, because oftentimes you feel like, am I really as good as I'm saying that I am? And that is totally normal. So just some general advice if you are dealing with imposter syndrome, focus on your own journey. I think sometimes people often compare themselves to others and be like, oh, they're younger than me and they've gotten further ahead and I feel bad about where I am, or I don't even have an internship and everyone I know, all my friends have summer internships, that kind of thing. Just focus on you are growing in your unique path and nobody else is walking that path except for you. So one practical piece of advice is don't doom scroll LinkedIn, because if you're just going to compare yourself to other people and that makes you feel horrible, then don't do that to yourself. Obviously you want to improve, but like if you're just going to make yourself miserable, then choose not to. And also, don't make publications the definition of your success. I know some people who think like, oh, I haven't made it as a researcher unless I can get a paper published in my undergrad. And truthfully, not every professor is going to give you the opportunity to do so. And that's not a reflection on you or your ability. That's simply the situation, or simply just what your research professor does. Maybe they don't typically give undergrads the opportunity to publish. So don't necessarily like stick to these hard metrics of success. So yeah, that's just some general advice on dealing with imposter syndrome. And then finally, this is just like a smattering of other tips I wanted to throw in. It's like a grab bag. Don't bulk email professors. That is a mistake. If professors kind of find out, like as you are searching for positions, that like you're like spreading the net too wide and not really actually caring about what the professors are specifically doing, they're not going to want you as a student, because it'll just make you look like you're trying to get a position without actually caring about contributing, which heaven forbid you leave that impression. Another piece of advice is don't post your research work online before it's accepted. I think sometimes people forget that research is so cutting edge that a lot of the information can be private or like things you should not share. So even if, like, say your paper gets accepted, double check with the grad students and with the professor in your lab and ask, hey, can I actually announce to the world that I'm publishing a paper yet? Because if you jump the gun and do it too early, that might be bad, because there is such a thing as like a double-blind review process. And then finally, like I mentioned before, if the lab isn't a good fit, you've really given it a solid shot, you've really evaluated it objectively, it's not just like your feelings of, oh, this is too hard for me. If it's legitimately a bad experience, then drop it. You can explore other options. You can leave the lab. You can look for other professors, or you can just not do research anymore. It is totally up to you. Your path is your own. Make the wise decision for yourself. And yeah, so here are some links to research opportunities and resources. These are at UCF. This one is Summer Research Academy. I highly recommend it. I did it my first summer at UCF before my first fall semester actually. This really taught me how to get into research and how to be a good researcher. It's only like a 3-day program, and occasionally you can get like credit for it. So if you're thinking about like getting into research and want the more solid, fleshed out explanation, then I highly recommend it. And then the SURF Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship. I did this my second summer at UCF, and pretty much they give you like a $2,000 scholarship that you can apply to your classes, and all you have to do in exchange is present your poster at their showcase. Which if you think about it, that's not asking much, and it's an additional opportunity to put your work out there. So it was a great experience for me, and that's actually how I did my very first poster showcase, so highly recommend that as well. And then we have a whole entire department dedicated to helping undergrads find research opportunities, UCF Office of Undergraduate Research. So sending them an email or looking at their website is definitely a good way to get started. And then off-campus research opportunities. NSF stands for National Science Foundation. They often have undergraduate research funding opportunities that you can look into. And research experiences for undergraduates are pretty much research programs at different universities. So I actually have a friend who did an RU at UT Austin. So she got to spend a whole summer at a different city, different university, got to make a lot of friends, and work with a whole new research lab and professor there. And it was like an amazing experience for her and helped her figure out what she wanted to really focus her personal research on. So these are all good opportunities. I'm highly recommending them. So yeah, that is the end of this presentation, but it is the beginning of our Ask Me Anything panel. I highly recommend you ask the people here any of your research questions, whether they be general or specific. We have a lot of talented student researchers, and as you can see, we're all working in different areas of STEM. So yeah, I'm going to open the floor for the panelists, and y'all can ask your questions. And yeah.
We're gonna set up real quick and then get started on the air. While we're doing that, I need to check the best in so we can do our
Yeah, there is a Blade application, which is our NiHack specific web app, which you have to get a little QR code just to scan you guys in, just so you're present for the event, okay?
Who doesn't have Blade? Give me a second. Like a QR code? You would do it after.
It's 3 points. I know the raffle for the prize.
Yeah, there's a raffle, by the way, if you guys just get checked in.
I can help you out.
Gotta get a photo of this. Yeah.
That's so fire. We got 2 left. No, same height as a bunch of people, so my God. Raise your hand.
All right. So the floor is open. If you guys have questions, feel free to raise your hand, and then you can target it at a specific person or just like in people in general. But we're all here. So yeah.
I have a question for Kenneth. What is physics informed neural networks? Is that specific?
Essentially, like, we're working on a lab, me and AJ are in the same lab actually. We're working on like, so they have like those wind turbine thing that determine like vortexes, which is like, they push like wind and stuff. So we're basically just making an algorithm to like, if they have incomplete data, they're gonna put what they have, and then we can kind of like piece together and like form a bigger picture of like how the wind is affecting like any vortex and stuff like that.
You guys have open positions for that?
Better.
I could help you get into it if you like, because I mostly got into it through networking. So if you'd like, I could speak with the researcher there who got me into it, and he might be like excited to put someone else on the team too.
This question is directed towards everyone. Could you all describe how you got into your research position, and then also a summary of what you do?
My professor walked into my 9 a.m. class and said, "Do you know Python, Linux, and Matrix?" I said, "Yes." I went to his office hours. He asked me 5 questions, pulled up the grade book, saw my grade, and gave me a position. So I kind of had like an easy pipeline. But it goes to show that research can be like really casual, honestly. And my whole group is pretty casual. So.
Which professor?
Wang with for on discrete structures. Yeah.
Yeah, so I pretty much got my vision from AJ. He just, like, he introduced me to the guy, so yeah.
So with me, I actually sent out a single cold email, and it helped out because I actually knew a student. I didn't know he was a part of that lab, but when I went to go for the interview, he was actually speaking with a professor, and I knew him from high school. So that also helped. And with my lab, what I do is I pretty much am building a pipeline for a brain-computer interface. So kind of like Neuralink.
And you guys kind of already know how I got my position. I got one of those VR recruitment emails, and they were like, hey, we need people, and here are the requirements. And I was like, this is super interesting. Sadly, I cannot do it. So I just sent an email back, and then had the little interview and sat in on a couple of lab meetings, and slowly but surely, my research professor gave me more opportunities, and I kind of showed that I was willing to work hard, and that kind of escalated from there. So yeah.
Yeah, so I had a friend who was also in the lab, so I didn't know. I'm like, can I get a position? He said, if you can pass an interview question. And I was like, okay, all right. And he said, this is a super hard interview question. You're not going to be able to do it. I had 2 grad students fail it. It's one line in Python. It is one math function that I figured out in like an hour. I submitted it. He's like, okay, I just wanted to see if you actually cared. You're in the lab. It's pretty casual.
For my first research lab, a friend of mine was in it, and my mentor was also in it for NIHACs. So when I talked to them about the research lab, they introduced it to me and wanted me to come. So I went to a few sessions and got to meet everybody there and the research professor himself. And after a bit, I started doing things with him for the interactive user systems and research lab. And then for the more recent one, I just talked to a friend again. My friend invited me to the open house for Pearl. And so when I went there, I talked to a bunch of people that worked on different aspects of the research lab. And I got to know a lot of people. And then afterwards, I didn't cold email them because I knew them beforehand, but I emailed them a few of the professors afterwards to see if they would like someone else in their team. And afterwards, I got to meet them, see which one I liked the best, and then they just invited me on if they wanted someone else.
And then for the follow-up, could you summarize what you all do in your research labs?
Sorry, we dropped that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm former, so I'm not in the lab anymore. But what I did was, I was like first year student, so they kind of threw me all of the grunt work. I'm not gonna lie. When I heard the slide about not taking grunt work, I was like, oh man. But they gave me basically what my lab mission was is they were looking at machine learning approaches to better cancer treatment and detection algorithms using machine learning on RNA. So that was a bunch of bio stuff I didn't know. I had no idea what was going on. But they basically just wanted someone to process and clean all of the data. So some pandas, some NumPy, and then I made that algorithm a little bit faster. By a little bit, I meant like 85%. It was great. Yeah, my experience was very casual. I never went into a lab once. I never went into office. The only time I met with my professor was in his office to like give him status updates like once every 3 weeks over the summer. Instead, mine was like a coding project. Like they basically handed me all of the tools in their lab and said make them faster. And let me tell you, biologists code. It was really hard to look at. So I gave it the software side, the software perspective, and kind of redid everything. And yeah, that was kind of my experience. I thought I was going to get hands-on with the machine learning stuff because that's how it was advertised to me. I didn't touch a single piece of that. I just had 160 gigs of RNA on my disk, and I was just cleaning all of it. Yeah, that's my experience.
So I pretty much like got into most of what I do. I'm still relatively new, so it's mainly during like the catch-up. I'm just learning like the context of like what everything is, and like they have code already there, but it's also like very outdated. So me and AJ are just going through it, trying to update what we can. Yeah, just trying to optimize like wind turbulence prediction and how it affects like different inputs and stuff.
And then for me, like I had mentioned before, I'm working with like the brain-computer interface, and compared to traditional brain-computer interfaces, they're used for motor imagery and mostly like health stuff. This brain-computer interface is more meant for daily use. And it's also, like Dylan was saying, a lot of the biocode for brain-computer interfaces isn't the best. It's really power intensive and it's also a little slow. So what I'm doing is that I'm making that data pipeline for that as well. I pretty much have to like work with other students. I have the more, I'd say, like easier task in that lab, mostly because it's just a data pipeline. Other students are making neural networks. Some are making like like a large language model. But yeah, it's mostly just like building a brain-computer interface. It's pretty light as well. Like I only meet once a week for about an hour with my professor. In terms of work, it's been like around between like 10 to like 20 hours a week, I'd say. Depends really on how much availability I have. But yeah, I started about a year ago, and I'm gonna hit a year in around August. So yeah.
Alright, so for my lab, basically my lab is called Extended Reality and Artificial Intelligence Lab, or X-Ray, and pretty much what we do is we collect VR data sets. So we'll often conduct studies where students or participants will come in and put on the headset, we'll record their motion data, which is often like headset and controller data, and that data later on becomes very valuable for the various experiments we're doing. So what I've been focusing on and kind of what my paper was on, basically I ran some traditional machine learning algorithms on that VR data. So we're talking like k-nearest neighbors, random forest, gradient boosting machine, just your standard like machine learning algorithms. And we were trying to see if we could infer personal attributes of the participants. So in our case, we did gender because often that is a private attribute that people do not necessarily want to reveal when they're using a VR application. And so by showing that you could actually infer it to a high accuracy, this really like unearths a lot of privacy and security implications, especially because companies like Meta and all the VR companies, they have access to that data already. So this kind of laid the foundation for the human-computer interaction and security subfield. So that's pretty much what I work on. But on the day-to-day, pretty much I coded up the code base to run the machine learning experiments from scratch, essentially. So I had to do a lot of research into what that would look like and kind of look at the template set by one of my PhD colleagues. And moving forward, I think I might be shifting a little bit away from the VR side and focusing more on machine learning. But we're gonna see where that goes because I haven't talked to my professor about that yet. But yeah, that's what I've worked on in my past 3 years of research experience.
My work's been mainly split across two things. I'm relatively new to the lab, but the lab itself doesn't have that many members because we're split up internationally. My lab's the F Data Lab, and it's run by Dr. Akora. He's a finance professor here, but he focuses on fintech. And our lab, we work in China, we work in Canada, we work in Turkey. So we have a bunch of different tasks going on at once. My onboarding was just working with basic graph neural networks, which are very diverse and very they go over different fields. Because essentially you can represent anything really as a graph. Like let's say like a friend network, right? Who am I friended to on Facebook? Who are they friended to, right? And using that information, I can infer data from there. You can also do that for molecules. You can do that for neurons. So most of my work was getting familiar with that. Now my next task is I need to benchmark a bunch of different models across different fields, get some metrics on them because we're trying to build a paper that surveys the general state of GNNs and foundation models. So by the end of the month, I need 11 models benchmarked. I started last month. I only have 2 models benchmarked, so we'll see.
Good luck.
Good luck. Get that down. But it's pretty fun. It's just the hardest part about the lab, I would say, is just actually understanding other people's code. When you look at a meta researcher's model, you kind of lose faith in the company. You lose faith in how people code. But it's really fun trying to figure out how different models working with different parameters. Benchmarking papers are also really important to survey fields because without those, papers that try to come out in the future and work on more advanced fields, let's say like temporal graph neural networks, which are ones that take in time, those need a reference paper to start from. Otherwise, that paper will have to spend half of its time talking about the previous fields. So it's good to set up foundational benchmark papers. Yeah, that's all I'm doing.
recent research lab I'm in right now, I started this semester, and essentially the whole lab itself has multiple different teams that work on propulsion and energy. So they work with like turbulence, vector fields, and CFD tools all the time. And so for my specific area, my team works with ramjets and basically just kind of showcasing and making graphs and pictures for the turbulence and the models when it comes to that for each showcase they do. And so my part of the team is using the physics-informed neural network to essentially make an easier process for them to almost predict essentially how the turbulence could potentially turn out depending on different factors. So it's kind of a hard like topic to get into immediately. So we've been working on a previous data set used, which is made by them, and we're also working on code that's been made previously by other people. So we're trying to combine that and essentially improve the code as it's been like half a decade old at this point. So we're trying to improve that so we can basically make our own pins to let them use it and essentially predict how the turbulence could potentially look with the ramjet.
Really cool.
Right, yes.
Do you guys have like regular like kind of like meetings where like you like pull requests on like Git and stuff like that or GitHub?
Well, for my lab, we meet weekly, but we have a bunch of different tasks. So our weekly meetings, it can be like you're meeting 3 times or 4 times depending on what task you're assigned to. And it also depends on the task. So for the task I was talking about, I've been the one mainly running the task for the past few months. So I'll just open up GitHub, show what I'm working on. We have a whole slides presentation of everything. Like I'm supposed to log my results there. I'd rather reuse Notion or something a little more advanced than Google Slides, but really there's no set procedure for how labs review. They just on a weekly basis want to see the status of what your work is, what's been going on, if you have any blocks, any new kind of information. So really any kind of standard you can see anywhere.
For me at least, we usually get one weekly Scrum meetings, and so we'll go around and everyone will say what they've been working on, what they're planning to work on, and what obstacles they're facing, and try to get help from other people in the lab. And it's really going to depend on your lab culture. So for mine, because everyone's doing separate projects, we don't have really like GitHub repositories that we're actively committing to and pulling from. So we didn't really have that. And my lab was definitely more focused on the human aspect as well. So we often had in-person weekly meetings, and that was just being social. So we would like play board games and stuff. But it's really going to depend on what lab you're working with.
Yeah, it's about the same with me, mostly because I work with a lot of CE students, plus like at the time when I joined I was the only CS student, and yeah, I mean, it depends. You can just make a branch and then just work on it. The majority of the time it is just a weekly Scrum meeting. Professors really, like I said, I feel like there's a huge like thought that research is like very intensive and you're going to be working a while and like you're going to be on there for majority of the week, but it's a lot more casual, especially when it comes to like undergraduate research. So I feel like taking that out, it obviously does depend on the culture that your lab has. My lab, like I said, it was like weekly Scrum meetings, and we would just sometimes even play games in there. And we would just say, similar to Joanne, just what we were doing. The professor would really gauge to see your progress, and it, yeah, like depending on like your research professor, they might give you like volunteer work. Others might give you paid work, or you can be like me, where like I started as like unpaid, and then my professor was like, "Oh, like, I want to start paying you come August." So it depends. Depending on your workload and like how much they see that you go through, they might boost you up.
Yeah, so my lab, I guess when they brought us both on, we were the only like CS students there. It's much physics people, so like they didn't really have a GitHub set up. Yes, we just like have weekly meetings, sometimes bi-weekly. It depends on like how much time we're able to dedicate towards it.
I met with my professor 4 times over the entire summer. And when I looked at the GitHub repo, last commit was 3 years ago, and there were no branches. It was just fix, fix, fix. That was the commit message for all of them. It was just fix. So no, it wasn't super hands-on like that. No, at least in terms of the review and the planning and the commitment and stuff like that. It was more project-based, so it was very, fluid and fix. It made me very sad. Wasn't much going on.
Yeah, now in terms of like pull requests, I would say like we're mostly working on the coding aspect ourselves, so it's just us doing all the committing if we need to. So no one else in the lab potentially like ask us, can you like do a pull request for this, or they send in something themselves. But yeah, as Kenny said, we do like weekly meetings on Friday. They're not mandatory unless you're like the main head of the research team itself, but yeah, they do some fun stuff too, like a Kahoot game potentially, but they just mostly talk about like what each team has done, progress they made, and like setting up for next week on what they can do for the research lab and like what experiments they want to do. But sometimes too, specific teams will just have meetings of their own and potentially just talk about like things they need to get done or progress they're making. So sometimes we have that, and then I don't know, a lot of times we don't. That can't lie.
Good question.
Kind of building off of that, I know that like, would you say you do a lot of your work is open to anybody, like in isolation, or is there like a lot of collaboration that goes on in the research?
I think I answered mine already. They probably have
And then
better
like
experiences.
follow up for Mo, you know your team is over. You said your team's like international, right? So
Yeah.
when it comes to collaborating with like team members that are like, international, how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's not the best. It's kind of tough. Time zone coordination is going to be the death of a lot of tasks and projects because we have proposed like other things we want to do. And it's like, okay, who are we going to use? We're going to use Mo because he's doing computer vision. We want to work with GCNs. We're going to use Bao, who's in Turkey. We're going to use et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like, okay, everybody put your times down. And nobody has any times that link up. So it's like, it's either drop people or drop the task. So it's, if it works out, there's little to no conflicts. If people have time that they can meet, it's the same thing as if I'm working with anybody who lives in Florida. But the very common occurrence of like your time zones just don't link up, that's going to happen a lot for those kind of tasks. So for those international kind of labs, you'll see mostly teams of like 1 or 2 people. Like for my task, I'm working by myself. For the previous task, I was only with 3 people, despite the lab being like 15 to 20 people.
Where are the other people?
Everywhere. There's 2 of them are here in UCF, one's grad, one's undergrad. Some of them are in Canada, I don't know what university. Same with China, I cannot pronounce it.
I'm trying.
Alright, do we want to start from Kenneth and go down?
Yeah, so I work with AJ, so like we're just with each other all the time. So whenever it just comes out, we just talk about it together.
But like nobody else in the lab?
I mean, they're just physics students, like they don't do like any coding.
What if you need like the physics in your code?
They handle all that. They handle
Yeah, they'll like send to us directly. We'll
So
hand
do
it
you
off
have
to
like libraries that you access that was like built by them, or is it just?
They don't usually do the coding stuff, so they didn't specifically build libraries, but they have made code for certain other things like MATLAB for processing the vectors and like showcasing the turbulence data itself. But in terms of like code and like that kind of stuff, it's mostly us. And in terms of like working with them, when we go into the lab, we're working with them, and then sometimes there might be experiment days where they're using the ramjet itself. So then we can help them out with that, all the process that come with all that stuff. But usually it's just kind of on our own, because the stuff we can do at home, but for them it's usually there since they have to do the experiments.
I think for me, I mostly work alone, but it depends on, like I'm in constant communication with my lab professor and as well as like our Scrum Master, which his name is Devin. He's a CE student, and I think he's been coding since he was like 7. Like, one of like the emulators for like the Nintendo 64, I don't even remember. He made it and like he upheld it to like 2009, some crazy thing. But it is mostly task dependent, especially like being the only CS student. Sometimes I do have to collaborate with like different members. For example, I have a CE student who he's a grad student. He's making an LLM. Sometimes he sends me like pretty much a model to test out and like benchmark on the server. And yeah, like it just really depends. Mostly code-wise, it is just mostly like me working on it, and then like I'll show my professor what I'm doing and how it's working, and then like he'll collaborate and give me feedback. But it does mostly depend on your task.
Yeah, going off of that, I think it definitely depends on your professor to really decide what the experience is going to be like for you. So my professor typically assigns projects that are more independent. And so, yeah, people would be usually working on their own thing. Occasionally he'll be like, oh, you two or you three work on this together. In that case, you're definitely going to collaborate. But when you're working on a project independently, the good thing about our lab culture is that we have like lab Discord and we're in like pretty frequent communication with each other. And the PhD students are often very willing to help. And so if you need help, they'll definitely like lend you a hand. So you're not like isolated, but it is still mainly independent work.
You already spoke.
All right. Thank you for that question. Yes.
Are there any particular parts of the projects you guys have worked on that you found most interesting? And why?
I think the interesting parts are always the non-CS parts. Because
Yes.
It's like you have to learn so much new stuff that you never thought you would ever learn ever. Like, bro, I could rotate an RNA in my head. Like I know RNA now. So like, it's weird. I never expected I would. And I feel like you guys might share some of the same opinions. Like, the CS stuff is the stuff you know, right? So even if you have to learn like new CS skills, it's still kind of CS. The fun part is when you get that like, you have to find some research paper to learn like just pure bio or like pure physics or like pure, whatever health code that was a lot of fun. Will I ever look back and reference anything I learned ever again? I don't think so, but it was still like a good brain exercise to like learn all of it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, just going off what you said, just whatever you do like that's not CS involved, like I had no idea what like ramp tests were, like how wind was used for energy, so I think like learning about everything with that was like really cool. Like seeing the experiments, like all the equipment that they use was like really fun.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like because I'm working with like brain waves and like brain electricity pretty much, and it's really cool because a lot of the students in my lab try to replicate the neurons, and since we're working on like a brain-computer interface, I didn't know how expensive like they even were, and I actually had AJ and Kenny try to like come into my lab and speak with my professor, and it's crazy because those like headsets go for so much money, like upwards of like $30,000, like a car, and it's it's really cool because, well, yeah, like I am making a pipeline. It's really cool to see how everything connects, and I think my favorite part about it is really getting into contact with the people in the community. Like I have a direct connection to a professor at Temple University, which I didn't even know that like he had like one of the biggest like open source like data sets for like EEGs, which EEGs like the actual signal type that we use. But yeah, he like I sometimes just email him like asking him questions, and I just didn't know that he had like one of the biggest like open source like data sets, and like everyone knows him in the whole like BCI community. But yeah, like it's very interesting to see how small everything is. Like you think about it like, wow, a project like that's crazy, and like how do you do it? But like everything's so connected. Everything builds off of each other. Right now, like what's fun that I'm working on is that I'm doing like a survey paper, and I'm kind of exploring more of that aspect of like the side that's really fun for me, where I'm just talking to a bunch of different professors, reaching out to a bunch of different universities, and it's really time consuming because I'm just reading papers that I don't understand. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like it's mostly the non-CS stuff.
What I found really interesting was just the machine learning aspect of my work, because that's really what I was entering the research field hoping I would end up doing, because I kind of, my end goal, I don't know if my end goal has changed, but I definitely want to be a machine learning engineer. So actually getting hands-on experience with algorithms and like dealing with a real data set where the findings that I make have real implications and I'm putting that out in the world, it's very exciting because now I know that I have my name on something that really added something to the field. And what else is really interesting for me is thinking about human-computer interaction as a field in general. I think this field will, like, it'll touch on, like, BCIs, brain-computer interfaces. It'll probably also, like, branch out into smart glasses in the near future. Mm-hmm. Just thinking about where all the research directions are going is really exciting. And also knowing that if I wanted to, I could probably, like, switch my research field to smart glasses if I wanted to. So that's really exciting to me, just the amount of opportunities and potential.
Yeah, I feel like mostly everything that could be said has been said. The fun parts is messing with stuff that isn't CS. Like, I'm good on ML, most of my projects are ML, right? I can make a neural network, sure, fine. But being given a task like, hey, you're gonna represent this whole network for like servers, right? Like I need a good pathway for servers so I can route traffic. You're gonna understand that data and you're gonna make it into something that you can use with your skill set. That's the fun part because you're learning a whole new field, you're learning a whole new different aspects, different attributes, and you're applying it to what you already learned. So it's pretty straightforward.
Honestly, I'm gonna just reiterate the same thing. Yeah, it's just everything like not CS related. Like seeing the code for like and going through different like machine learning things is cool and all, but seeing everything else about a research lab, things that you might not know, like seeing a ramjet for the first time and seeing it go off and all that kind of stuff is like really cool to see because like that's kind of stuff you might not be able to see if you don't do a research lab. So stuff like that's interesting, especially like seeing what other teams are doing, communicating with other people, seeing what tasks they're up to. It's interesting to talk to anybody and just like see what's going on because computer science stuff can be like a little bit limiting in terms of like what you get to learn. So being able to step out of like that field and see what else people are doing is like super interesting and kind of makes you more like excited to do what you're doing in the research lab.
I definitely add on to the real part that was brought up. I think it's really interesting for research how like you're actually working on like real data, like for the people in the lab that are like focused on the data collection side. Like I had no idea an RNA reading was so big. It was like 10 gigabytes. Like they gave me 15. I'm like, oh okay, and then it was 150 gigs. I'm like, okay. But I think that's really fun to just like, you know, it's real data. It's kind of cool. Real impact too.
I think you can kind of sense from all of our answers that research is very interdisciplinary in nature. So often in our courses, we're kind of stuck just learning like pure CS things, but here we get to like deal with biology, physics, and like, you know, virtual reality, all of these things. And research is a very unique field and space to do that.
You have a question for like all the people that said, you know, the most fun part is like the non-CS related part of your research. So how do you go about like learning the non-CS related things? Like what, what resources, my voice is gone, what resources like do you use in your lab that helps you grow in the parts that you're less familiar with?
Honestly, I feel like for my research lab, they talked about it like a lot to me themselves when first introducing the stuff. So I was able to learn a lot of new things from them and stuff I just didn't know about at all because the research lab mostly deals with like aerospace and obviously being a CS major, it's like out of left field for me. Like I have no clue what they say sometimes for certain terms and I'm like, it just sounds like buzzwords. But honestly, being able to see all that kind of stuff is super cool because it just had me more interested. And so basically like how I would like research and like take notes on that kind of stuff is essentially like any resources they had, I'd ask them to like just send it over to me. I could read over them, take notes, do like Notion or whatever you use, and look up my own stuff honestly because also talking to other people in the lab that like are doing the research and know what they're talking about can be a great way to actually like gain resources and notes of what's going on because like for that lab, it was difficult at first to understand what's truly going on because I don't know much about aerospace things, but having like people basically essentially explain to me in a way that's like more simple and understandable made it a lot more interesting and kind of exciting to learn more about it myself since I could then kind of like use their words and interpret it my way to make it also more simple to understand.
Yeah, I think the best thing for me was just reading papers. Understanding how to read papers effectively and not get lost in a paper per phase is a great way to extract information because most of the work you're going to do in research is built off of more research work, other labs' work, what they've done. So actually understanding the state of whatever you're working on by reading other people's papers, and even better if you can find out who has worked on what and just message them on GitHub, message them on whatever publication they use. 9 times out of 10, they want to just talk about their work. So you can learn from them and ask them, hey, how did this work? How did you link this up? Were you going to do anything further with your work that would work into my field? So just look up stuff, read papers, ask your professors, ask people in your lab if there's any resources they use specifically as well. So it's not that hard to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, to answer your question, anytime I'm dealing with something that's outside of my specific field, I'll often consult with PhD students in my lab because they usually know more than me about the topic, so they can either explain it to me in a really quick, condensed way, or they can refer me to projects or videos or resources or papers that I can like delve to. So I'm not like blindly exploring, I'm really using my resources and then using that to direct where I should be going.
For me, I entered my lab and I didn't even know I was going to do the brain-computer interface. I was actually interested in the error correction for quantum computing because he has a lab for that, and it's actually meant for graduate students. He was like, "Yo, you could join, but it's gonna be rough." So I did, and I came in and I was like, I have no clue what a brain-computer interface is, and I remember that the best thing that I did, and the first thing that I did, is that I read a paper on how to read papers, and that just opened my brain to like being able to understand how these papers really work, because like Mo was saying, everything is built off of each other, and that's really where you start getting like survey papers and stuff, because you're just condensing a lot of the stuff that you took so much time to learn for someone else to just build off of that. And yeah, it's mostly just reading papers, asking questions. I'm someone who I am not shy to ask a billion questions because I rather be sure of what I'm doing rather than just throw myself in. And I spam my professor sometimes at like 2 a.m. Yeah, the Scrum Master, he's been in the lab for a while, I think 2 years, and I just spammed him too. There is like a little like Discord channel as well where we can just throw in a bunch of questions. And yeah, mostly just being open to stuff and asking questions has always been the best.
Yeah, so pretty much very similar to what Mo and Adrian said, just like doing your research outside of it. When I first joined, they linked me like a few papers I can like read on, as well as some videos I can do like a review and stuff. So pretty much like going through those, asking questions whenever I have like I'm stuck with something. We communicate on Microsoft Teams, so I always like send a message whenever they like get back to me pretty quick.
So many papers. It was just all just bio stuff, like so many papers. Because I had no idea what like they gave me this algorithm that they wanted me to fix, and I didn't even know like what the actual algorithm did. Like it like transformed RNA and found like splicing events. And I didn't remember what a splicing event was. Like, just a lot of papers, honestly. I tried YouTube. Bio is not on YouTube enough at all, but a lot of papers.
Good question.
Maybe the last one.
Oh, so quick yes or no question. Did you make money at your exam?
Yes.
No.
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 Time out. How did you make money? He didn't make money.
I said no.
Here's a no.
I was
the only
yes. He was only yes.
They both did not make money.
I thought you said no.
No, I said
I do want to say though, for all of you in the crowd who are thinking of doing research, I think the thing on my resume that always gets the most questions has always been my research.
Yeah.
Like you're making a Neuralink because that's honestly the best way to explain it, because everyone knows Neuralink, no one knows what a BCI is.
Yeah.
And I had like a little like 2-3 minute chat with the Verizon lady that dragged on for like 15 minutes. And she was just asking a billion questions about what a brain-computer interface was, what unary computing is, how I did it, what I'm doing, am I going to publish a paper? And honestly, just because of that, in my opinion, money does not like translate at all into the value of that. And if you really are looking into research and you want it to be something that like A, is interesting to yourself, because it's a lot of grunt work, and if it's not interesting to you, you're going to get really bored of it. And B, have it be something that you're proud of and you know you can speak like well to. And yeah, honestly, just take the jump, like Joanne was saying. You guys should leap into research. I think it's a great experience, and it makes you, if you're just doing it to elevate your career a little bit more, it makes you an investigator. You're going to be able to documentation for code. I can read 10 times better now. Dude, before I was like, I have nowhere to look. Like, I don't know how to start. And now it's like, I know exactly what I'm like reading, how to read it, how to do it, how to take notes on it. So it's not even so much the skills that you get from the lab, but it's more of the soft skills that you get as well.
Yeah, going off of that, I think what I gained, although I wasn't paid, it's definitely worth much more than the value of money if I were paid. Although if we can get paid, that would be great, because it can be a both and. But for me, because I'm heading to grad school, actually, because I'm probably going to be continuing my research with the same professor, he will be paying me like a stipend to live on. So this will essentially be my job for the next couple of years as I'm getting my PhD. So it's translating into money. And if you think about it, with a higher degree, the amount of jobs that you can get, like there is pretty much no ceiling anymore. Because if you just have a bachelor's, sometimes there is a ceiling. They're like, oh, you need a master's degree or you need a PhD. If you have a PhD, you can get pretty much whatever job
Also get
in your
paid.
field. And get paid more, exactly. So although I'm not being paid now, I think that the gains I'm going to get from investing all this time and energy is definitely worth it.
To echo, I would have been fine doing my gig for free too, but to also echo, I mean, hey,
Money's nice, yeah.
it's nice.
You know, if you can, then go for it.
Yeah, and I think it's good to see like what Joanne is doing, especially going into a PhD program, because sometimes with CS, like people worry about job security. Research is not going anywhere, especially new and opening fields like BCIs, like smart glasses, headsets, etc. Like with anything computer or biology or finance, whatever, there's always going to be like research departments for jobs. And you might feel like I originally, when I started like reaching out to like Professor Wu, I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna like research. But later on, like I've realized it's actually really nice and it's kind of fun. So go on a whim, try it out, honestly. And you might really, really like it, and if you don't, you just leave.
Exactly.
Get a side hustle. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Any final questions? Any time for one more? If not, I think we're going to wrap it up.
As well, if you guys are interested in specifically my lab with the brain computer interface, I can give you guys an email with the professor. He is interested in getting more CS students, especially just anything in particular with just learning what neural networks are. Butterfly, I don't even know what it's called, but there's a lot of CE that goes into it that you're not going to know, but it's fun to learn it. So yeah, and then they even opened up the doors to me even like wanting to do like grad school down the road. So definitely, if you guys are interested, I can give you guys that email and help you guys out with any questions that you can have. Okay, I'll be sitting up here if you guys want to.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for coming.
Can I get more in touch with you?
He's an assistant professor. He mostly focuses on research.
If you want to talk about it, yes. You wanted like new words.
Unary lab. They kind of explained there. Unary is just a computing paradigm, and he just goes off of that. Yeah, I'll get your I can text you.
And then I can talk to him next time I see him. And also to be helpful for anybody else. And if not, I can message him back to you. It was good seeing you.
What was your right now?
Deadass, I just had no idea. It was mostly just like,
I'm just like talking, just like,
yeah, so basically just talk about what they do and what part they want you to do for the team. And they said, we'll give you good time, but just think about it here. Depends on the team usually, because if you're like small, they're more accepting for like whoever might want to be on the team. But if they're bigger teams, it's a little harder. They might give you an interview, or they might do stuff like that. Stuff like that.
I'm interested in creating whatever.
That's good. Honestly, it's pretty interesting. It's a lot though. It's interesting.
I mean, I'll put my schedule this time, I'm not gonna spare time.
Yeah. I'll talk to him. It was good seeing you.
Yeah, so I was just like, all right, I'm gonna get paid. Yeah, that's what I did. Cause like, it was not, that's how I got the show, bro.
Dude, so I don't know if we meet over the summer. I've never met
That was it.
over the summer, but he definitely does take it over the summer.
No, but I take out a load
Really held it up.
Oh no, for the club? Not really.
We're just playing together.
We might be active. I'm probably just active.
I could be the team.
But